The next concept in exception handling is exception bubbling. So the way which an exception travels different layer of solution, either it can be an object or processes page, is known as bubbling. An exception will be bubbled upward until it is handled, and if it is not handled, it eventually bubble up to the process main page and end up in having a process termination. Even we do catch an exception, we have an option to throw it upwards again. Deciding where and when to handle exception is a key part of solution designing that we shall return to. So coming up next, I'm going to show if you handle exception in your object layer, which is the lowest layer, and how does it's going to end to your process main page. And if you left out without handling exception in your object studio, and where it is going to take into your process main page, and how that has been handled or that's been thrown. I'm going to use the same process which we have already seen in an exercise solutioning. So in this process temperature extracting from Google, I'm going to use one exception in object level, and we're going to see how the exception from object has been traveled from object to process, which means like bubbling from lower level object to process main page. So either open the object directly, or you can even open the object from process studio itself. So in this object, or sorry, in this process, we are going to do some small exception handling in object level. So this is the object we have opened. Before writing exception, I'm going to give one simple calculation stage which we have used in our earlier sessions as well. So the same concept, don't make it more complicated at this stage. Make the data item as like X and give it as 1, and make the data item again as like Y and give it a 0. Use the same way where we have used to explain exception stages earlier. Use the same concept. So just store it with the result data type. This is not going to be a meaningful business flow at this stage, but just to explain you how exception is going to get bubbled from object to process. So now I've just added it. I'm going to save this. And now you can close the object because we are going to run it from process. So basically what we did is like before, after writing your location, you are doing some calculation and that is not handled in object. The error which is going to throw from object is now traveling from object to process studio, where it is going to get failed. So if you miss to handle an exception which is ideally occurring in your object studio, and that is going to come, or that's going to travel all the way, even if you have any sub pages in your process, if you're not handled it, it's going to end up exactly in the main page, because that is the last part in your process. That is a higher level, and from there it's going to get end up in terminating, as I explained in the theoretical part. So just start running. You can be able to see the exception which has been thrown now in the screen. So this is the exception which is thrown, and the exception earlier we were, right now at this point we might be familiar with this exception because this has been used in a couple of 3 more previous sessions as well. So this exception we haven't handled in object, so all the way it traveled from object and it is landing into your process main page where you are. So this is the most, I mean, this is the most important concept of handling or dealing with your solutioning. If you failed, or if you are not able to handle, or if you miss to handle the exception in your object level, it's going to travel all the way from object subpages in your process and going to end up in process main page. Ultimately it's going to cause your process to get terminated. So it's better, or it is always good to handle your exceptions well in a defined manner, so that you will not end up in having issues with your process which will end up in termination. Even in your process taskbar, you can be able to see the exception which has been traveled from object all the way, which is saying like uh, there is an error which has occurred, failed to evaluate an expression x divided by y division by 0. So this error has been happening or coming all the way from this action, which is input location, and the process name is this one. Of course, this is the process name, and in process main page, you have faced this issue. So that is the concept of exception bubbling. See you in the next session.